Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi/X/first time posting here. I'm a mostly skeptical guy, and I'm going to post about some stuff that happened to me, which I found curious, weird, or impressive on how the brain processes stuff it perceives. I want to know your opinion. First one. I live in a building from around 730 that is considered a national monument. It looks like a weird building with towers. It has an inner garden, size of a football field, maybe more. Everyone walks their dog there. I walk the dog at late night for a couple days, like midnight or later. There is barely any moonlight sometimes. It feels like darkness has swallowed half the garden. I see a kid at like 50 meters, at least the silhouette, and something that looks like a human face. It is facing towards me. I wonder what the hell is that kid doing there that late? It vanishes. I realize it was just shadows and my brain auto-completed it as a kid. Another night, same circumstances. This time, it is an adult. I wonder who the fuck is that person. It vanishes. Fuck them shadows. Now the garden has some areas with bushes and larger trees. My dog quickly enters said area, starts smelling some bushes like she has found something. I think it is a cat by how my dog is acting. I tell her to come back, but she refuses. Some bushes suddenly move. What? There are lots of leaves on the ground. I see like something invisible steps on them, step by step, walking towards me. I just stand there looking. It stops just in front of me. I feel like there is something just a meter from me. I tell my dog to get the hell out of there and we leave. It felt really weird. I always assumed it was just wind and shadows messing with my brain, but at the time it felt kinda unsettling. And I know it feels dumb compared to other stories told there, but I want to know what you think. I had to move back with my parents. They now live in a small village. It is a 3-story house side by side to another abandoned house. 2 a.m., lying on my bed doing whatever with my phone. I hear a noise upstairs. Something fell to the floor like a tool or something. I hear an old man's voice sighing several times. I think it is the upstairs neighbors. I realize I no longer live in an apartment and we do not have neighbors since the upper floor is empty. I grab a knife and a lantern, go upstairs and see nothing. I go back to my room. A different night at 2 a.m., I start hearing a woman's voice wailing. It goes on for several minutes, then stops. I wonder what the fuck is that? Now I no longer hear these voices and sounds, but there's a new one. Same hour, something like an intestine sound but more artificial, repeating itself each 2 seconds or so, then stopping for 30 seconds and starting again. And that's it. What the fuck is happening to my house/X/?
I believe you may be dealing with a crawler unknowingly. I know you do not know what this is, but the best advice for your direct safety is to ensure that every door, window, and access point, including chimneys, are blocked off and locked critically at night. Furthermore, if you do find out the source of these issues to be a crawler, you will need to take more steps to ensure the safety of yourself and anybody you may be living with. I have encountered this being before, and somewhat more indirectly several times. They are masters of the night, and masters at mimicking human voices, though their natural sounds are much more guttural, if trying to frighten, or clicky for other states. Crawlers go by many names. I use crawler as it carries less baggage with it. You may have heard it called skinwalker, wendigo, rake, djinn, etc., etc. But the creature is one and the same. They are a species, it would seem. I think they are evil beings from my encounter. They are nocturnal, are incredibly fast, would easily make fastest animal alive, accelerate very quickly within the 120-pound range despite their size, are inhumanly skinny, lanky, have a round mouth with sharp pointy teeth on the inside, have disgustingly dry and malnourished-looking pale white skin, are masters at mimicry, both of humans and animals. Their presence is terrifying. Encounters can be profoundly fear-inducing. Mine convinced me that God is real, and I cannot sleep in front of a window anymore. They seem to be strong, with lethal claws. They are cave dwellers and can move through tight, cramped spaces with ease. They usually go on all fours, but not always. They have huge, pale white eyes that look like voids when in the dark. Do not look into them. If you ever find out if this creature that I describe is the one that you may have around, make another post, buy a gun, and ideally get in contact with a priest. What leads me to suspect it is a crawler is the following. First one, late at night, lots of darkness, surrounded by an old, probably large building likely connected to the sewer system directly, being watched by a human-looking form hiding in some shadows. The dog is upset. I have been around and heard of dogs around these things. This happens. Some outright run, some get very anxious. Bushes move? Or movement from bushes, probably where it was at. I feel a strong presence, probably experiencing exceptional psychological distress, which is one of its tools for hunting humans. Being around them can result in a lot of confusion and sensual overload. Second one, rural area. They like creeks, woods, caves. Tall structure next to an abandoned house. They like to live in those, easy homes for them. Late at night again. Hearing a noise above you, are you sure it cannot be something walking or being on the roof? Hear something sighing. Nothing is actually inside the house, however. A woman wailing. This is a common theme and tactic in crawler stories, especially when it is intent on luring and hunting a male human being. It probably stopped as it got no response. Predatory, testing behavior. It gets frustrated, reverts to animalistic sounds from deep and guttural to a weird type of chittering. It sounds kind of off because you have heard other things sound like this, but not quite like this at all. Be careful, put in some reading, and if you can help it, don't be alone or unprotected at night. These beings are common. They are dangerous. You may want to see about putting up some cameras. They tend to avoid these. Prayer can help, but you gotta do it right. I like to say that a spiritual defense is the other half to having a gun when it comes to dealing with these things. They can be behaviorally cowardly or finicky, sometimes really aggressive, but also avoidant or observant. But I cannot overstate this. They're very, very fucking scary. Good luck.
I have a story from when I was a kid. Be me. Probably around 7 years old. Lived in the middle of nowhere surrounded by fields and woods. Raised by my mom and an elderly couple. The sun is setting one evening, and I hear a commotion from the backyard. I am looking out over the field from the window upstairs. The dog and chickens are freaking out for some reason. On the edge of the cornfield, I see something moving. 3 unusually large black dogs slowly emerge from the corn. One looks at me. For some reason, I run downstairs and go out the back door. It is absolutely silent now. They are now standing about 50 yards from the back door. They all look at me. I am overcome with a terror that I have never felt before. I freeze up and cannot move from the back door. They look like something pretending to be a dog. We just stand there staring at each other for a while as I am unable to move. Something grabs my arm and yanks me back into the house violently. It is my old man, and he has his shotgun. He slams the door after throwing me inside, and I hear 2 shots. I covered my ears and cower because I was so scared. He rushes back inside and latches the door and tells me not to go outside. I look out the window again, and they are not there. He tells me not to tell my mom about it when she gets home. They would not let me play outside by myself anymore. I do not say anything about it for nearly 20 years. I casually bring it up to my mom after all the years. She gets a little hysterical. She tells me that she saw them before too. They followed her home one time while she was out in the woods collecting mushrooms. She describes them exactly as I saw them without me going into detail. She told me that she had never been so frightened, and said that she did not know what they were, but they were intelligent. I wish I would have asked the old man about them before he passed away. I never saw them again, and we had moved pretty far away from the old farm.
They were probably after him, not you or your mother. Otherwise, neither of you would be here to tell the story.
My father told me a story once. I'll never forget it, for a few reasons. I think it's the first story he ever told me, as a child. It's also the story of how my grandfather died. But honestly, that isn't the reason. You hear stories on TV, or sometimes you overhear something in a public place. People talk about ghosts and aliens, and you think to yourself, that ain't real. They're making it up, or they're mistaken, or they're crazy, or something like that. You just can't believe it until something happens, something that brings it all together, connects the dots in a way you didn't think of before. Maybe it happens to you. Maybe you hear the same story again and again, happening to different people. It doesn't take long for the world to become a lot bigger than you thought it was. As I said, this is a story my father told me, but I never believed it, even though he swore up and down it was true. It wasn't until I started clicking around the internet I started to believe. I started to hear other stories just like the one my father told me. It didn't take me long to believe in the rake. That's not what my father called it, of course. He's never used the internet in his life. He wouldn't know what the consensus has taken to naming it. When he chose to call it something other than it or that thing, he called it Skinwalker, after an old Cherokee tale his grandfather told him. But I'll tell you the story, the way he told it to me.
We were out hunting one night. Coyotes, we'd kill them for $50 a skin. We lived on a dairy farm in Ohio. They'd kill calves sometimes. We'd do it every night because we needed the money. Sometimes while we were out, we'd find a deer and kill it. Our landlord didn't mind, and it could feed our family for a few nights and save us some money. Blood everywhere, splattered on the trees and the grass and the creek, everywhere. At first we figured it was a pack of coyotes. We've seen it sometimes. They can't scavenge and start hunting deer or cattle. The worst was when they breed with feral dogs, but this wasn't like that. See, when a pack of dogs or wolves or coyotes attack something, they do it right. They'll pick off one that's weak or sick or old or just small. They'll hunt it, draw it into a corner, someplace it can't get out of, and they'll run it right to the biggest one, the alpha. And that deer will never see that alpha. It might hear it, but it won't see it. It'll just notice that its throat is gone, and then it'll drop dead. It's quick. It's clean. That wasn't what happened here. Something had run up on a den of deer. Coyotes won't attack a den, wolves neither, because they'd get too much of a fight. There were three bodies, just torn apart. You'd see a head here, a leg here, a torso there. Predators don't do that. They don't leave behind scraps. What had done this hadn't done it for food. It had done it for fun. But we didn't know that. We saw a bunch of carcasses and we think it's something we got to take care of. I remember my dad telling me to go home. He thought it was a pack of feral dogs. But I wasn't leaving him, and I damn sure wasn't walking through 2 miles of woods alone, with nothing but a .22 and a pocket knife. He was only 13 at the time, so a .22 rifle was about the only gun he could reliably use. Dad had the shotgun and I wasn't going anywhere without it. It took me a while to convince him, but finally we began tracking whatever did that. It wasn't hard either. We just followed the blood. Either that thing bled a deer before it got away, or it dragged one for a mile. I don't know. I know that I'd never seen my dad scared before that night. We started hearing noises. I've been in a lot of woods in my life. I've been all over the world, and ain't never heard noises like I heard that night. I heard things screaming. I heard deer, foxes, rabbits, and raccoons and birds just scared. Keep in mind, this is maybe 12 or 1 o'clock. Except the fox and some birds, nothing was supposed to even be awake. But they weren't just awake, they were moving. I saw flocks of birds that night fly straight into trees just trying to get out of there. We came up on a pack of coyotes, nearly shot a couple thinking it was what we were looking for, but then we saw they were running towards us. They ran right past us and didn't even notice. Then some deer did the same. Then some rabbits, squirrels, foxes, even a couple wild hogs. These things were supposed to be eating each other, and the only thing they cared about was getting out of there. We should have put it together, that maybe whatever we were tracking, it wasn't something we were supposed to see, and it wasn't something we could kill. I don't know why we didn't just go home. I guess we were curious. I think that was my dad's nature, to go toward trouble, to fight. And knowing what I knew about what my father did during the war, my nature was to stay close to him. We finally got into an open valley. It was normally a soy field, but it wasn't in season, so it was just flat dirt. We saw the tracks then. A lot of the animals fleeing the forest had paved over the land, but where that deer blood was, nothing had taken a single step, like they were leaving it for us to find. The tracks were shallow. Whatever it was couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds, but that didn't mean much. A bobcat weighing 40 pounds wet nearly tore out my damn throat once. All that means is that it's quick and hard to hit. So we follow the tracks, and it doesn't take us long to find where it is. There's this old schoolhouse that sits on the top of a hill. Half of it had been ripped out by a tornado, but nobody lived there, not for a long time. We caught homeless people in there sometimes, or druggies looking for a safe place to shoot up. We figured maybe that was it. Maybe it was some sick kid riding a high, but we didn't think that for long. We get within 50 yards and we hear this noise, a screeching kind of sound. It was sort of made up of two different sounds. One was a high-pitched screech, another was a low-pitched growl. It was making both at the same time. We get within 20 yards and we hear this sound. I can remember thinking that it sounded like paper being torn apart while someone was swinging water in a bucket back and forth. Dad looks at me, kneels down, and whispers. I gotta stay behind him because we're about to corner him. Any animal will fight when it's cornered, especially when it's a predator. But we can tell by the tracks that it's just one. He tells me it's probably a single feral dog, probably rabid. The plan is to sneak up on it while it's eating, shoot it, and then keep shooting it till it doesn't move anymore, then slit its throat. And if it gets to Dad, it's my job to shoot it or stab it to get it off him. So he walks up and I'm right behind him, just a tad to his side so I can see what it is. I wish to this day I haven't. It was leaning over a carcass, tearing off its flesh and throwing what it doesn't nibble at aside. There's blood all over the brick, glistening in the moonlight. It's pale white, human-looking but not quite human. It had arms and legs like a human, but it sat like a monkey, hunched over. And its hands weren't normal. It had long fingers with claws at the end. So we see that, and my dad hesitates. He wasn't about to fire on a person, so he clears his throat to try to get it to turn around. I swear to God all the noise just ceased. I ain't ever heard true silence before that, and not after it. But for 2 seconds, nothing made any noise. Which made it all the louder when it turned around, made this shrill cry, and jumped on Dad. He got a shot off. I think he missed. If he hit the thing, it didn't mind, but it was on him, tearing parts of him off. I started shooting it with the .22, point blank, but it barely bled the thing. I got off 5 rounds and then I started hitting it with the gun butt, but it wasn't budging. It didn't even register that I was there. It's clawing at my dad, taking off bits of his flesh. It starts on his torso, ripping off the skin, his tit, then it moves up. It tore off his throat, it tore off his nose, his eyes, it scalped him. Then it started digging in, ripped off the bottom half of his jaw, the little bones and that tube in your neck, then his ribs. I don't exactly remember what happened, but somehow my dad's knife ends up in this thing's shoulder, and my dad ends up on my back. I'm running, and by God, I'm running faster than I'd ever run before or after, and it's following me. I end up back in the woods, opposite the ones we've been in. I'm heading towards my landlord's house, because it's half a mile away. I can hear this thing, screeching and moaning. I hear these tree branches crack and get thrown around. It sounds like someone's taken an axe to every single tree I pass. It's cracking so loud and often, but I just ain't looking back. Finally, I trip into gravel. I look up and there's my landlord and a bunch of his buddies, drinking around a campfire. I scream and I cry, and they come over. I'm telling them to call an ambulance, and he looks at me, and I'll never forget what he said. "What is that on your back?" he asked me. Just as he said it, he saw. One of those god-awful flannel shirts my dad wore everywhere. It was what was left of my dad. Most of his head, his torso, but nothing after the waist. Suddenly we hear it, screeching. He grabs me. My dad gets thrown on the ground. I'm fighting him, crying, because I think we can still save him somehow. but my dad had been gone before I ever picked him up. He has to pick me up and throw me inside before I come with him. He and his buddies were all inside, and they're locking doors and getting guns. The landlord's asking me what happened, but I just don't know what to tell him. He pieced enough of it all together to understand that there was something dangerous there. All the lights in the house are on, and someone calls the cops. They'll be there, but in 15 minutes. We look outside and see it walk in front of the fire they'd made. Don't know what it is. One of them says it looks like an ape. Suddenly something goes through the window. We shoot at it, but ain't the thing. It's a deer. Just the body, though. Not his head or legs. We start pushing things in front of doors and windows when we hear something in the garage. I remember one of his friends saying that the doors were open. We hear metal and glass just get ripped apart. We put a couch and a TV in front of the door to the garage. It banged around some more, but then it got quiet. Not silent, like it was before. We could hear it move around some, and the guys were talking, making sure the guns were ready. Someone hands me a pistol. No sooner did I cock the hammer back did we hear something shatter upstairs. Then we heard it screech again. Except now it was louder and it didn't echo and fade out, because it was inside. We all rushed to the one door leading upstairs, and we got to it just as that thing did. It opened it just a bit, and 4 or 5 men just slammed into it. It got its hand through. Someone with a shotgun took care of that. Put the barrel right up to its wrist and pulled the trigger. Cut its hand off. Clean. That only pissed it off, though. It started pushing on that door, clawing. We were on one side, pushing as best we could, and it was on the other, doing the same. That wood just wasn't going to hold, so someone told us to keep our heads down. Suddenly, the top half of the door is just gone. My ears are ringing, and there are splinters everywhere. 2 or 3 of them just unloaded on the top of that door. I don't really know where it went after that. The police got there. I was still glued to that door, what was left of it. The sun was up before they got me off it. They put me in a hospital for a while. A lot of people talked to me, but I didn't talk back, not for a long, long time. When I got back home, I got a job for the landlord working on the farm. We didn't talk much, not about the thing. But I signed up for the Army when I was 19, and he sat me down to drink some scotch as a send-off. I asked him right away what the police told him. The story they went with was a wild animal, probably a wolf or maybe a bear that had migrated north. I asked him how they could say that when they had the hand. He looks at me, stunned. He tells me that hand never made it back to the station. The cop who had it in his car wrecked, drove into a tree, died on impact. The hand was never found, probably taken away by an animal. The cops, when they would acknowledge the hand existed at all, said it was simply the paw of a bear that looked like a human hand. I never talked to the landlord again. He went missing when I was in basic. Never found him. They said he owed some people some money and just ran away. But I don't think it's that simple. I never went back to those woods. I wouldn't even if I had the whole goddamn U.S. Army at my back.
But that was a lie. When my mother died, I don't think my father felt he had anything left, and that he might as well settle old scores. He went to those woods. He never came back. The FBI was called. They did a show for everyone involved, but I knew they weren't really looking. I had to get one drunk and slip him a few 50s before he finally told me that they get a few calls about those woods every year, about someone up and vanishing. But that was all he wanted to tell me. Before he got up and left with the rest of his team, he wrote "The Rake" onto a napkin. I didn't know what it meant until I searched for it on the internet. Honestly, I would have rather not known.
Here's a story about my attempt to photograph a crawler. Be me. Live in a small town in the northern part of the U.S. Around December of 2022, there had been crawler sightings in my town. It got to the point where some people were seeing 2 to 3 at a time every few nights. I did not believe the sightings at first, until one night I am driving back from my wagey job. I spot one walking along the road into the forest. It walked like both feet were nailed to a plank of wood. It was also gaunt with long, spindly limbs. The thing was naked and had white or gray skin. I did not get a good look at its face. I doubt it was a homeless person or a drug addict due to how cold it was that night. I decided to try and get a photo. I come onto /x/ and ask for tips on cryptid photography. I get some good pointers about getting good camouflage and equipment. The best tip was to ask local hunters for advice. There are a few people who hunt for fun in my town, but most of them go to hunting preserves outside of the town. There are two dudes who do know how to hunt and have a good understanding of the area. I will call them Martin and Jake. Martin is 30-ish, kinda shifty and quiet. He has moved to the area back in 2016 after getting in trouble with some of the law enforcement down south. He now spends most of his days walking aimlessly around the town when not drunk in his RV. Jake is 63 years old and has lived in the town since before most of the roads were properly paved. His father used to take him hunting in the woods when he was a child. Both men know a lot about the area and agreed to help me get a few photos. They tell me they want to wait for the storms to subside and the snow to melt a little. We decided that February 28th would be a nice date to shoot for. I agree, and during this time they teach me useful stuff, like how to avoid detection by fox walking and making camo out of dead foliage. Slowly, sightings of the crawlers dwindle, and by late January, there was only a few sightings every 2 weeks. The weather was also pretty bad, so we moved the trip to the 1st of March. The day of the trip comes around. We head into the woods. Jake has his father's old Garand. Martin has an old beat-up Winchester shotgun. We hike in the woods, and for the first few hours, we are swapping stories and chatting about life. Nothing too bad happened that first night. In the morning, we stumble across something odd. It was a wolf, or what was left of it. It stunk to high heaven, and its head and stomach were the only parts left. The rest of the day, we are more alert. No more fun stories after that. Martin wants to head back. It was still pretty cold, too, and the previous night had been pretty bad. We decided to cut the trip short by 2 days and just spend one more day out. Jake says we should head to one of the creeks where a few animals usually congregate. While we are walking to the creek, the smell returns and it is downright nauseating. Martin starts getting vocal about wanting to head back. Jake also is starting to show concern. At this point, I felt maybe wandering around in crawler territory in wintertime was not the best of ideas. We decided that maybe it would just be best to head back to town and come back in the summer. On the way back, Jake says he knows a shortcut to where the van is. He says that there is this old stone path that leads us to the van. We follow, but something starts to feel off. My vision seems to feel off. The best way I can describe it is when an old camera struggles to catch up with rapid movement and everything is glitched. Martin starts saying something about his feet burning. Jake is basically dead quiet the whole time. The sun is starting to head down, and we are nowhere near the van. I ask Jake if we can sit down and tell him how my vision seems screwed up. Jake does not respond. He just keeps walking forward. I ask if he is all right. No response. Martin asks Jake if something is wrong. No response. My head feels like it is on fire at this point, and I just sit because I just want the pain to stop. Martin starts yelling at Jake, but Jake just keeps moving forward. Finally, Martin shoves Jake to the ground. Jake asks what happened. He says he does not know what is going on. My headache was starting to subside a little, but the sun was finally dipping below the horizon. Jake asks where we are. Martin asks Jake what he remembers. He says he remembered us heading to the creek, and then everything after was a blank. We do not know what to do, and we start to panic. The sun goes down, and it is pitch black. This was the first time I realized how dark the night is without any streetlights or cars. It was like staring at a wall. I could only see like 3 feet in front of me. It was also so cold that it felt like needles were being shoved into my face. I fumble through my bag and pull out a flashlight. While searching for a flashlight, I hear Martin tries his best to bring Jake up to speed. I find it, and before I can say anything, Martin goes quiet. Jake goes quiet too. For 10 seconds, it is completely quiet. No animals, no wind, not even the sound of snow being crunched by footsteps. The smell hits my nose, and it completely overtakes my nose. I start to cough and then look at Jake and Martin. They are pointing at something. I look to where they are pointing and see something white pass cut through a tree. Martin screams and points his Winchester at something. Jake starts to back away from Martin and towards me. I point the flashlight in the general direction of where Martin is pointing his gun. It is a crawler. Martin tries to fire his gun, but nothing happens. He tries again, and this time something does happen. The gun explodes. Birdshot flies everywhere, and Martin falls to the ground. My ears are ringing. Everyone is screaming. I caught a glimpse at the thing. It is taller than any man I have ever seen. Its skin is gaunt and colorless. Its limbs are spindly, way too weak to support this thing. Its face is almost featureless. Almost. I say almost because the eyes are the main feature. Black, like a shark or a dog's eyes. I stare into them and am met with the worst feelings. It was like my mind went blank and every thought was instantly replaced with pure negative energy. It was like staring into eternity. It was one of the worst feelings, and I am struggling to put into words what it was like. A loud bang fills the air. Jake has started firing the rifle and tells me to drag Martin. Martin is on the ground, writhing in agony, cursing and screaming about everything and everyone. Birdshot and bits of metal are embedded in his face, hands, and arms. I help him get onto his feet as I hear a ping. The thing is gone now, and it is just us. The wind starts picking up again. We drag Martin for about 40 minutes trying to reach a road. We are lucky enough to stumble upon a road and a car picks us up. Martin had to get a few bandages and stitches. It has been a few days since the incident, and Martin got discharged from the hospital a few days ago. I paid for his hospital bills and tried to talk to him. We talked for only a few minutes about what we saw. The last thing he told me was that he was taking his RV and heading to the southwest. He left 2 days ago. Jake, on the other hand, plans on seeing his family in Florida in a few days. He gets uncomfortable every time I ask about what happened that night. And that's the story of how I saw a crawler and vowed to never go looking for cryptids.
As an American, I'm not concerned with fairies and gnomes and shit like that from across the pond. Euros killed off all of their monsters a long time ago. The noticed extinction of things like the European lions coincided with the unnoticed extinction of many cryptids. And over the centuries, many of the remaining monsters died off, becoming silly little myths. Same for huge parts of Asia where massive population centers have been for most of human history. Here in America, natives didn't have anywhere near the technology or numbers to kill off their monsters. They rightfully feared and avoided them like most cultures did. Through manifest destiny, we learned that some native cryptids can be killed with firearms, which means they're probably still here in great numbers, far from civilization, and they're not bulletproof. Theoretically, this means that other pre-black powder cryptids are also probably not bulletproof, but there's so few of them left that it's impossible to test. I'm of the opinion you can kill a vampire or demon with a well-aimed shot from most firearms. Same for any other cryptid. I dip my Carrie and Innawoods bullets in white ash from burning a white oak tree branch. That alone will break most spiritual barriers, but specifically makes skinwalkers weaker, and probably Wendigo too. Whatever you end up shooting it with, make sure you burn the body to release the spirit from our physical world.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.